Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. Zooming in on a very important topic, and that is how to manage a relationship with a covert narcissist. And I would like to zoom in and emphasize the topic that perhaps silence is your worst enemy when it comes to dealing with a covert narcissist. It is very important to understand that if you've just now embarked on this journey and have realized that there's an impact, a toxic impact, a negative impact, really being around a covert narcissist, meaning because of their lack of empathy, because they're literally not capable of understanding where you're coming from. Your needs, your issues, your wishes, your interests, they're not able to embrace those, if you will. Empathy is the capacity to really understand where someone is coming from and appreciate that and respect that and acknowledge that and then mirror that back to them. And, it's as much as, for example, understanding that, how someone is feeling and the extent of their feelings, and then being able to acknowledge that and then work with them on a term-by-term basis how to resolve those, and then just deal with them and then move on. So healthy relationships, are really typified by having an empathy. So for example, it's saying, I understand that you don't appreciate the yelling. I appreciate, I'm sorry that, for example, if, you had been abused verbally. An empathy would be, I'm sorry, that my yelling had hurt you, and that was not easy to listen to. And in fact, you probably didn't want to listen to me yelling at you, because who would? I mean, that's not a proper way to talk to somebody, and I apologize. I didn't mean to yell, but I was, out of place. I was, really worked up about this. It's so important. I've dealt with this time and time again, and I was just pushed to my limit, and I apologize. Let's talk about this civilly now. So that would be an example of empathy. So it's a emotional intelligence. It's identifying what somebody doesn't like, and then being able to say it. It's being able to communicate. It's being in alignment. alignment, in alignment. So it's like a balance, in other words, between what you feel inside and what you're able to communicate. And empathy is when you have that with somebody, you have an alignment, you have an emotional congruency, you have an understanding. And that, feeling comes and goes, but, essentially, it's something is there. There's a connection, if you will. Now, that is really a difficult thing oftentimes to experience with a covert narcissist, because there is such a disparity, which means a difference, a deficit between what, who you think that person is and really truly what they are inside. And it seems very strange, especially, it's a difficult concept to understand. Or, if you're really just kind of uncovering this in your relationship, it's going to take perhaps a little bit of, going over again and again and just kind of understanding what's going on there so you know how to deal with it. But, how to understand this is that the person inside of a covert narcissist feels very different than the person that you see outside. So in essence, they're concealing, they're covering up. It's an active, plastering over, if you will, of their true emotions, which is really not healthy, but it's their personality. It's a pathology to cover up, to conceal a feeling of insecurity, a feeling of insecurity. Perhaps they, not necessarily that they feel insecure, but there's a certain self-loathing or something that they're attached, a sort of negative self-esteem, a sort of woundedness that they are covering up rather than processing. And it could be, based from their childhood. Each person is unique, but they might be kind of hiding this inner sort of feeling that they're not good enough, that they have a certain resentment, perhaps how they were raised or all that they've had to overcome in their life, rather than having a sense of dignity and pride and self-esteem that they had come through these issues or, worked through them in their family. Perhaps they come from a very poverty or impoverished background or impoverished mindset from that. In other words, they feel like they didn't get what they needed when they were younger, so they had to work extremely hard. They had to, maybe move, or even, move countries in order, because it was so impoverished, or their needs could not be fulfilled there, so they had to abandon that background, and they had to leave there, and they had to, overcome a lot of obstacles, a lot of emotional barriers, cultural changes in order to, really create a better life. So even though they were able to do that successfully, and feel that they were deserving of that, deep inside, they might have that self-loathing, that sort of insecurity, rather than having worked through it and saying, man, I'm a champion for really working through all that, and I embrace that part of me. They kind of sever it away from them. So that's kind of that, perhaps that void, or a feeling of just that there's something, painful with this person that you're attending to. And the people who have a strong degree of empathy are able to tune into that and register that more significantly. So realize that, I think it's perhaps realizing some of the personality dynamics of the covert narcissists that are working. And so, once you can appreciate that, you can, then realize that, that's how this person has evolved, adapted. It's, it's their personality makeup, and it's pretty much going to be there. And there's ways of lessening the hurt or lessening the divide, but realizing that oftentimes when a true covert narcissist, they're not able to change a lot of that because they really kind of lack that empathy. They've shut it out. It's not an active part of this person, if you will. So, it's accepting it, or, using some of the tools here that we described to make sure that you've got some things out in the open and discussed, so you, in turn, don't suffer in silence. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.